Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Horror Appraisal. I'm Sam.
Yeah, I'm Evan.
We're here to talk about a very special movie. He's going to give you the rundown on the beginning of it.
I absolutely will. We are going to be talking about a film that not only is just perfect for this time of year, Halloween. I consider it one of the all-time great Halloween films. It's absolutely probably one of, if not my favorite horror film of all time. Ever since Sam and I have started doing this little thing, I've wanted to do an individual
the cramps for
review.
it.
Yeah, review of this film. We've talked about it a couple times in our 1982 top 5 review, and also I believe in our top 15 horror movies that you should watch around Halloween that we did last year sometime, and we've talked about it from time to time. The film that I'm talking about is something that I'm really super excited for. It's the George Romero directed, also written by himself and Stephen King, Creepshow. Creepshow, oh my God.
It's so creepy.
I love Creepshow. Creepshow is absolutely just such an awesome film. Of course,
let's talk real quick about who's in it.
Well, that's fine. I just want to say it's an homage, of course, to the old EC comics, such as Tales from the Crypt and everything else before the Comics Code Authority came along. So therefore, the film has absolutely all these bright colors and panels, and it's kind of put out there. The stories are done in vignettes, like one of those comic books. And of course, the movie stars, some people before they had a really blossoming career, but among many well-known people, Adrienne Barbeau, Hal Holbrook, Leslie Nielsen, Ted Danson, Galen Ross, Stephen King himself is in a story.
Tom Atkins?
Tom Atkins is in this film.
Ed Harris?
Did I say? I thought I said Ed Harris, but yeah, he's in the first one. But yeah, this film has got
John Amplas.
This film has got a cavalcade of horror veterans and also other film stars.
And Tom Savini does the effects.
And Tom Savini, of course, does the effects. You guys, we did a poll, and Creepshow was voted the next film to do for our the next entry of our Tom Savini series. So I'm just absolutely so excited to do Creepshow because it's one of my favorite films of all time. Now
I'm glad you got that weight off your chest. Yeah. I know you've been jonesing to do that.
I have
for a
just
long
had
time.
such a boner to do Creepshow, man. It's not even funny.
Creepshow, man. Like Creepshow is one of those movies that it has is one of the, like, you listen to Monster Squad, like you think about Monster Squad, and you think about that. It's like one of those movies you grow up with and you just cherish because you love it so much.
Absolutely.
I think that also happened with Creepshow with a lot of people. I constantly hear,
myself included,
Twitter, YouTube, we constantly hear from people that just love Creepshow. They grew up on Creepshow. There's a girl in my office named Beth.
Yeah.
She is like, "Do you have Creepshow 3? I've never seen it."
Oh my God.
I was like, avoid at all costs.
Yeah.
She's like, "But I love Creepshow," and I was like, avoid at all costs. You know, that's kind of how I did it. Like, I mean, watch Creepshow, enjoy Creepshow, but don't worry about Creepshow 3. It's terrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
yeah.
Creepshow 3 has some of the really great lines from Tom Atkins.
You mean Creepshow?
Yeah.
Not Creep. You said Creepshow 3.
Creepshow has one of the great lines that I love from Tom Atkins. That's why God made fathers, baby.
Yeah, of course. Tom Atkins plays the father who's thrown out the issue of Creepshow that his son is actually played by Stephen King's son, Owen King,
which is he's an author now, isn't he?
He is an author. He goes by another name, but yeah, he's an author.
Yeah.
That's why God made fathers.
I think he does.
I look at some of the effects in this, and I think some of these things are very simple, but they're also very effective. Like you think about the guy who wants his cake.
Yeah.
And he comes back to get the vengeance on his
Nathan
daughter.
Grantham.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just love, an interesting facet of that story.
That's
is
the first story, by the way.
The first story, it's called Father's Day. And of course, an interesting facet about it is she's at his grave, and she accidentally spills like some whiskey on the grave. And it's really, people think that it takes its, that from a story called Finnegan's Wake, in which a guy had
that doesn't sound
alcohol.
Irish.
Well, yeah, exactly, because they brought him back to life with alcohol, and the alcohol spills on his grave, and then you see his hand shoot up. But it's just so much fun.
Let's talk about that for a second. When he comes out, it's just very red. That's when you really start.
The lighting is great.
That's when you really start to notice that the Argento Effect takes place, and you're like, Romero really learned something from Argento. I think,
especially from films such as Suspiria and.
I think, with Dawn of the Dead, I think that they talked a lot, and I think Romero really enjoyed watching some of the Argento films. He's like, you know what, I'm inspired,
sure,
and I'm gonna make Creepshow, and like when you see him come out of the grave, and you got the red,
you got all the reds,
and so much blue,
and it's usually there's a part there with him where It's red and blue, and they're kind of fighting for dominance on it. It makes a very kind of cool effect. It gives you a lot of depth and shading that you don't really, pretty much see.
It's kind of like, is this the real life?
Yeah. It's very. You made a good point earlier when we were rewatching the film to review it. You said other horror effects and other things where things are supposed to look more realistic, more brutal. That's more realistic, but things like sometimes things like George Romero and Tom Savini films, we have realism versus surrealism.
It is,
and I really liked how you said that because I absolutely agree with that. You have more of a carnival feel, more color and I don't know. Is it weird to use the word fun for a horror film because this movie's so much fun?
It's very strange. The main poster for this is the Crypt Keeper taking tickets, right?
Well, it's the Creeper.
It's the Creeper.
But of course he's
a very inspiring for Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah.
But that's another story.
Yeah. But he actually was inspired. You can say that actually because the EC Comics had Tales from the Crypt and they had the Crypt Keeper, and of course the Creeper was very much taken from that character and the character who did the Vault of Horror. I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Right. But I think about the main art for this, and
Vault of Fear.
It's got the Creeper, and it's brown, mostly brown.
Mm-hmm.
Like the main art for this is just brown, but the movie is so colorful.
Well, I still
But then you have the international art.
Yeah.
That is just like bam, colors everywhere.
Yeah,
it really represents
the comic
film.
book cover, but they also did release the one sheet in the United States for that too. They just had two different ones.
It's in advance, yes.
Yeah. But so basically, it just goes through. It runs the gamut. Now, I will say something. There's only. It's hard to pick a favorite among so many good things. The one that I do think is still in there, and I still think it's enjoyable because it's the Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill starring Stephen King, and of course it's just very entertaining to see who is arguably the most famous author who's ever lived. Of course, that comes with the advent of technology and everything.
Along with Mark Twain. And
yeah,
stuff like that.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. Mark Twain wasn't as famous as in his day, I think, as Stephen King is now because of everything can be so widespread.
I wonder what Stephen King's going to be like in his death.
Yeah, I know. But
yeah, like in the year 2090 or 3000, like what is he going to be like?
I think he'll be known as a master of literature, such as Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft. But anyway, that story itself, I don't find it, terribly scary or anything. To me, it's just kind of a goofy little romp, and it is interesting to watch the Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill.
That story, I will admit, takes me away from everything real quick because
it can.
Because I see the Grinch.
The Grinch.
And then he blows his head off with a shotgun.
Well, to be fair, that one predates the Grinch by a bit. And of course, I never saw.
Does it predate the Grinch?
Well, are you talking about the film version with Jim Carrey?
No, I'm talking about.
Oh, well, of course it doesn't. No, that was done in the 50s because Boris Karloff did the voice of it.
Right.
Well, when you said that earlier, I was thinking you meant the Jim Carrey version of the film.
Is that because Stephen King makes facial mannerisms and looks like Jim Carrey, or Jim Carrey looks like Stephen King from this? Do you think Jim Carrey may have gotten some of his inspiration from?
No, I don't. But anyway.
I think he looks just like Stephen King.
They actually told, it's funny, speaking of cartoons, that George Romero, when he was directing Stephen King for The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill, you know what direction he gave him as far as his mannerisms and facial expressions? He said, do every scene like your Wile E. Coyote falling off that cliff, like where, he's just, it's just, he's a freaking loser. He never has any luck. That luck is spelled B-A-D, bad. But moving away from The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill, I
have to make an admission.
Okay.
I had a little bit of an awakening. A lot of times when you look at movies that I didn't see Creepshow a lot as a kid.
Me did. Me did much.
When you see movies that you loved as a child, you get it very much.
Mm-hmm.
When you didn't see it much as a child, you're like. I got a little bit. There's a story that I hated on a lot with the roaches, the cockroaches. The guy's a freaking asshole, and he fires people when he hates on them. And you said that it's the roaches are a manifestation of his nastiness.
That's
and
how I
filth.
feel. Is that those roaches are a manifestation of all of his guilt and what a just horrible shit person he is.
I got it. at this time, that is no longer my least favorite portion
Cool.
of Creepshow.
Well, I'm glad
my least favorite portion of Creepshow is
The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill.
Yes.
It's my least favorite of all of them too. Like I said, it's got a certain novelty for seeing Stephen King do that, and like, oh, ha, whatever, it's fine. But when it's over, I'm like, nah. But
I'll save your favorite for last. My favorite part.
All right. Okay.
Is the crate.
The crate, yes.
I think this is where Tom Savini shines.
I absolutely agree, and I do have to say, I think for fans of Creepshow, I think that most people probably favor the crate over any other vignette in the film.
But I think you got a lot to say about the other one, so.
Well, yeah, but let's talk about the crate.
The crate.
Not as much as you think, probably.
Tom Savini. Let's think about this for a second. This is really his first creature.
It's one of his, I can't think in my head what creatures he would, other than of course doing makeup effects for zombies, but he totally created, this creature that comes. They affectionately named the creature in the crate. You know what he named it? Or maybe George Romero, they named it Fluffy.
I remember that. Yes, I remember George talking about that when we met him the first time.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
he said, we called it Fluffy. Think about Tom Savini. He had primarily been doing human-related effects. He did a vampire, still human form. Mm-hmm. He did zombies, still human form. And then they say, hey, make something that's like a monster from the Arctic, and it's like, oh, that's a beast. Yeah. And it's got teeth, big long teeth.
It's something that can apparently also survive 150 years in a crate.
It gets this grad student, and it bites him in the neck. Yeah. And it makes these really great teeth marks that drag across his neck.
Slashes his face.
And it slashes his face, and his eye droops.
Yeah,
and I love that part. That's really, when I saw that, I was like, I'm sold on this section so much.
Do you know what I think makes it actually look really realistic for that? I love the drool coming off of the fangs when it closes up on the monster's mouth, on those razor sharp teeth. I just really like all the drool being pumped through it, and it just looks really good.
That creature is very unique because it's like its upper body is so developed like an ape.
Yeah.
But its lower body is it's so inept because it's been in a crate for 180 years.
That's a great point to make. We talked about rewatching this now where you see it crouching down. I think it's right after it grabs the college student, the grad student. And you see it's crouching there. And it actually does make sense that maybe its legs would be a little bit more inert because it probably had him pushed up against its body or
it's been in a box.
Yeah.
Forever.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's true or if they meant it that way, but to me that makes sense.
Just total atrophied legs. It doesn't really need its legs because it's in a box.
Yeah.
It's been in a box for almost 2 centuries.
Yeah, at least since like the 1840s.
Adrienne Barbeau. We met Adrienne Barbeau at our first Scare Fest, and she is such a nice lady. But it's so funny to see her be a total bitch in this movie.
Yeah, she plays one very well. She plays the opposite for Hal Holbrook. Hal Holbrook is the just the absolutely
pushover.
Yeah, he's kind of a pushover. And you know what? Sometimes I empathize with that character because I'm a little bit of a pushover myself. I think that's what would happen to me. But
you're gonna marry an alcoholic, and she's gonna fuck all the men, and you're gonna be like, okay.
I like,
and they're gonna kill her in a fit of rage.
I'll be like,
in your 50s.
Whatever.
Just record it. Whatever happens.
Yeah. But yeah, so the crate, another great one. Like I said, it's probably everyone's favorite. But moving on, my favorite is actually Something to Tide You Over, and of course it's the vignette with Leslie Nielsen, Ted Danson, and Galen Ross. And
you all probably don't realize that's Galen Ross there.
Galen Ross from Dawn of the Dead. She doesn't really get a lot of good face. Most of the time you see her on it, her hair is covering her face as the tide.
Harry or Henry?
Harry.
Help me, Harry. That's pretty much what you get from her.
That's about all you get. So, of course, you guys know the story. Leslie Nielsen is a cuckolded, guy who gets revenge on his wife and her lover by burying him head deep in sand and neck deep, whatever, and letting the tide get him. And I really don't have that much to say about it. And to me, it's just such an enjoyable story because I find Leslie Nielsen has a very deadpan way of acting when he's not. Well, even when he's in comedy, that's what makes Leslie Nielsen so funny.
He's like the opposite of Hal Holbrook.
Yeah, he's just very deadpan, and honestly, like hearing the threats and things he makes to Ted Danson, I really buy it, and that sinister quality he brings to it, I think really, I really buy that for Leslie Nielsen.
I think we got the real
acting in this
Leslie
film.
Nielsen in this
Well,
movie.
you know, Leslie Nielsen, of course, started out as a very serious actor. As kids, you know, we knew him from Naked Gun and everything, and then he was in, you know, of course, Airplane. You know, interesting side note. Before George Romero could call action on the set during filming that, Leslie Nielsen had one of those little fart machines in his pocket, and he would make Ted Danson crack up because, like, right when he said action, he would like press the button, and this big fart would ring out from his pocket.
God,
and Ted
so
Danson said he couldn't even like really keep a straight face. That's what Leslie Nielsen was always doing.
Oh,
but
my God.
the thing that, you know, the thing that of course I find most memorable about Something to Tide You Over from Creepshow is, of course, when Harry and is her name Becky? I've seen it a million times. I can't, but whatever. They
don't
come
hear it
back.
very often.
They come back, of course, to take revenge upon Leslie Nielsen. And they're their skin is just water soaked, and they're
the gunshots.
but I can smell them watching that.
It smell like seagull shit.
Yeah, it just smells like, you know, because Leslie Nielsen even makes a comment about how when the tide is in, you know, just that horrible smell.
Fish.
Yeah,
Dead fish.
rotten stuff. But you know, they're coming towards him, and of course, I almost think he can't believe what he's seeing, because if you notice when he sees him, he's not that terrified at first. He does. So
I think he expected it.
You know, and I think like any of us, we refuse to believe that these are two dead people. Of course, he shoots the lady in the head, and it hits her, and you just see all this green water, and
It's very watery,
and it just pours out of her, and it looks so cool. Like, it's just very, and he shoots Ted Danson too. He shoots Wentworth.
He shoots him in the
shoots him in the shoulder,
right here, and then he shoots him in the head.
And you know, Ted Danson's character is repeating all the stuff Leslie Nielsen said to him, you know, telling him, you know, if you don't panic, if you can hold your breath. And then I love the Ted Danson. He's like, it's showtime. I love that. And you see like Leslie Nielsen go, and like it just, his freak out is just so cool and fun. And then,
I will say that he does have a good freak out.
Yeah, it's just really fun.
Answer me this: Why didn't Ed Harris get out of the hole? Why didn't he get out of the hole? Get out of the hole, Ed Harris!
I don't know. He just sat there and let that tombstone fall on a man splat.
Why? He wasn't flat plastered.
I know.
Like, why? You could have lived. You could have lived.
Yeah.
Ed Harris.
But you know,
you made The Abyss. You were so good.
Yeah, you made The Abyss. You were so good, Ed Harris. That's all. And that's the whole story of you, Ed Harris. But you know, I don't really have much else to say about it. Love this film. I think it's a great Halloween film. Perfect for this time of year.
It is a great film.
Yeah.
And I will say one of my favorite posters is my Italian two-sheet from Creepshow.
Yeah, it's a really cool poster.
And you know, of course, you've got your advanced Creepshow one sheet, and I've got my international one sheet.
Yeah, got a lot of signatures on it.
There's so many amazing. There is a lot of artwork that comes for Creepshow, and it's so crazy. I want to be honest here. I want to vent for a second. I feel like the artwork for Creepshow, in a lot of ways, outsells its content. Because like it's so hard for a movie to match a comic look. Like it's looking for like that zaniness of a comic character, or that color, and I think that George Romero really went for it with like going with like the crazy blues and reds, and that was consistent from story to story. I liked that, and I feel like one of the things that I hold against Creepshow is that you've got this really great international art one sheet, like, or the advanced art one sheet. It's so colorful, and then you've got the movie. It's so hard to live up to.
Well, I mean, that being said, you know, look at great fantasy masterpieces that have, you know, great posters, such as, you know, Conan the Barbarian and everything. And you know, that's one of my favorite films of all time. Nothing, I think, can ever live up to the allure and wonderment and majesty as a piece of art. Because we look at the piece of art, and automatically our mind conceives, what's that going to be about? Or we have a...
I think that's been my problem with.
We have something that we think, you know, this is what it's going to look like, and then when we actually watch the thing, and we see that it's not exactly what we conceived, I think sometimes it creates a schism, and our mind fights it a little bit. But you know, I gotta say, it doesn't bother me. I can see your point on it a little bit, but for me, you know, it's just because it's such an homage, you know, to old horror comics. So it was just rightly fitting that they had that kind of artwork for it.
Last comment, because this is going to be in the Tom Savini series reviews. I love his cameo at the end.
I love it. Yeah, he's the garbage man.
He's the garbage man at the end, and what's he say? You know, That's all that messes. It's just an effect that messes with your eyes or whatever.
Yeah,
Or the
so
X-ray
they were talking about
glasses.
getting X-ray glasses. He's like, it's a gag. It just gives you dark circles around your eyes.
Yeah. What was the other one? With the voodoo doll. Oh,
Yeah.
that one's been ordered, and he pokes his
Yeah.
like garbage glove through there.
Yeah.
I think Tom Savini. Tom Savini is an actor that is unsung. I think.
Well,
When you look at him in like From Dusk Till Dawn
Mm-hmm.
and like his little bit parts, I think he's really good.
I think he's a fan favorite, definitely, and it just makes sense that has little bit parts in the films that he's helped make. I think it's only right, and maybe it was just a cheap way too to get like someone else in there, to do something. So he's got a legacy, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I love Creepshow.
He does love Creepshow.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a renewed enjoyment of Creepshow.
Good. I'm glad, man. I'm glad. So I think that's going to wrap this one up. But
Creepshow.
we've got a couple of ideas that we're going to be trying out soon. Hopefully, we'll post some polls on Twitter and see if what you guys are like more interested in, like we've been doing. That's actually been having a lot of success for us. Please follow us on Twitter at The Horror App.
Yeah, and we probably are thinking about prior to Halloween. I want to ask, what would you rather see? A video with the films that we consider to be the best vampire flicks,
Yeah.
or our individual favorite films, like top 10.
Yeah.
Like we do a top 10 films, but I give my 10, he gives his number 10. I give my number 9, he gives his number 9. Like,
etc. etc. etc.
would you rather see that or the top vampire films? And not with the vampire films, we would not be ranking them.
Mm-hmm.
Like we would just be like, these are the best vampire films.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway, let us know what you think.
Yeah, we'll put that up. Thank you guys again so much for watching. We really appreciate it from you that do, and we appreciate your comments on our videos and everything else. It's a hobby that me and this guy have, and we really thoroughly enjoy it. He puts in a lot of work to make these videos, and I really appreciate you for that. And really, he just kind of lets me sit in and enjoy the ride. I don't really have to do very much. So,
You're silly, sir.
yeah. All right. Well,
I'm Sam.
I'm Evan. Thanks, you guys.
If we don't make another video out before then, happy
Happy Halloween.
Halloween.
Yeah. All right. Good night. Thanks,
See you
guys.
later.
Bye.